Hi everyone, welcome back to Gear Media Tech Live. This is part of the live series that Pixelcore does most Thursdays. We would say every Thursday, but there's a couple that we miss here and there. We missed last week. We were shooting live at Dreamforce, Salesforce's largest convention, and so we were a little busy, but we thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we deal with on live streaming and field questions that you might have. I know a lot of you are interested in doing live streaming. And we're doing it in a lot of different ways, a lot of different formats. And so we thought we'd show you a couple more. I think we've done this in the past, but we're going to do it again because a lot of people keep on asking us questions. And so if you have questions, now remember, if you're watching this live stream right now, you're going to see over on one side here, on one of these. I can't remember which one, but I think it's this one over here. You're going to actually this side. Oh. Very, very good. So right over here, there's a place where you can ask questions. Now you can ask those questions and you can vote them up and down. And what we're going to do is I'll be working from the top down. So if you like a question that gets asked, make sure to vote it up. And also just ask questions. If you've got questions about live streaming, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. The idea about me starting the talk is really to get you to start asking questions so we can go through that. So one of the things that I thought I would do is talk a little bit about some of the systems that we're using currently for some of our live switching and why we use the ones that we use. So the first thing is that what we have here is I'm going to move. This is my little whiteboard here. So we'll talk about this at another time. So anyway, so what we want to do here is if we look at this here, the first thing is this is the smallest mixer we own. And we think it's pretty nifty. So what you have here is this is an HS50, and if we get an overhead of this, we will. There we go. So there we go. So here's the HS50 here, and what you have here is this is a Panasonic. We use a lot of Panasonic mixers. We like them a lot. We also use a data video mixer, which I'll show you in a second. But this one here it's got 5 channels. Now it's got 4 SDI channels and 1 DVI channel. The DVI channel turns out to be very useful. That means if you're getting a computer input that you want to watch for a seminar or something like that, then you can actually input that there. Now you'll see that you've got 2 buses here. That allows you to basically make sure that you have a preview and this is program up here, preview down here generally. You'll see your inputs here are SDI, and this is standard SDI inputs. Then we have some DV in, DV out, tally even, and some control from the LAN if you have the tools for that. Instead of having a bar a fader bar here, you just have this little slider here, and it works actually pretty darn well, and you can of course cut and auto. So it's all the basic stuff that you would need. Now this costs about $4,000. I have to admit we've never actually used this in a show. This is the backup to the big one, but we use it as glue all the time. It's crazy. I mean, we just use this thing. We need to do a nice little transition from something to something else. It turns out that it's just a great little tool for us to do that with, and it is the backup for the larger mixer, which I'll show you here in a second. So this is, and we're going to talk about a lot of random stuff. I'm just talking about mixers here. We have talked about them in the past, but again, we're going to talk about them in a little bit more detail. One we didn't show you last time when we talked about this is this larger one because we were using it, so we couldn't show it. And so this is the Panasonic HS450. This is a slightly larger one. Let me move some stuff around here. And what you have here is this is an 18-channel mixer. Now it's 16 channels of HD SDI. We bought an extra board that allowed us to go with 2 channels of DVI. Now there's a server unit that I'm not going to pull out on the table right now because it's packed and ready to go. We're shipping it to London on Saturday. And so what we wanted to do was this is kind of our big mixer here, and let me pull it back a little bit so you can see it. So we've got a little feed out, a little feed that we can kind of look at the information here when it's on. It's really cryptic, but I have to admit that I actually find it easier to look at the feed than the on-screen graphics. It's one of those things that I feel like I should be looking at the on-screen graphics, which you can do. But I tend to look at this and it makes more sense to me. I don't know why. Anyway, so what we have here is that you've got 16 channels that are in. Of course, we can preview them or play them. This is your auxiliary bus, which we can use for keying and so on and so forth. One of the things that we like, so one of the things about the mixer is this gives us a lot of scale. We end up with a lot of situations where we are literally needing to, we had this thing packed last week. So we had inputs coming from a whole bunch of different cameras, a whole bunch of different inputs. We had computers and Wolf overhead cameras and a whole bunch of other things. And we literally, I never thought that I'd get to a point with 18 inputs that I'd be full. And we were full, and we had to use a router. And we're not going to show you the router today unless, anyway, we'll talk about routers. But if the router is available, we'll bring it out. I'm not sure if it's in some box. Once again, we're packing right now. So this guy here allows us to do that. Now, one of the other things that we like about this, and one of the reasons this has become really a required item, has been we don't use all the channels all the time, but what we do use is the keyer. One thing that's kind of unknown, and Panasonic, I don't think promotes it as well as they should, is the fact that this has what I think, they don't talk about it, they're not promoting it, but I think that it's actually a Primac keyer. So it acts very much like one anyway. And it is a very, very powerful key. We've been doing lower thirds. If you go up and look at the keynote from Dreamforce, you're going to see some of those keys. And remember, those are all done over green. We're not using key fill yet with this. Now, it does handle key fill, oddly enough. So does this little guy. So this little guy will take a key fill. Now, what a key fill is I can take a color channel and an alpha channel, so a black and white channel that controls the transparency, feed both of those into two different SDI inputs here, and what I'm going to get is one's going to key the other one, and only a handful of. Let me see if I can get this right for you here. I don't know where we're looking at here. There we go. So with these inputs here, we can have two of them being taken up by the key fill. And that means your graphics are going to take up two inputs there. But imagine if you're doing a seminar, what you can do is actually, if you're running a seminar, what you can do is take a computer in, and then you have your graphics, key fill, looking gorgeous, and then two other cameras. And so that's one way that you could handle that. Anyway, this will not key as well. This has got a chroma keyer in it. It's fine. It's not great. It does a pretty good job. This one does an incredible job. I can't even believe what we can key. We're actually going to start trying to key shows with this guy because it's so powerful in that way. Now, this one's going to cost a little bit more. I think the retail on this guy is $26,000. So it's not, we use it a lot, so it's worth it. But it's something to kind of keep in mind. It's not something you're gonna. I mean, you could buy a car for that. So anyway, that's all I gotta say. Car. Anyway, so that's something you have to consider. But if you're looking at building a studio and you've got the funds, I would suggest it. Let me see here while we're talking. Again, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about here, what you want to do is ask them on the Idea Engine. And one of the questions we have here from Vince is, what has to be done on site for setting up a stream when you have to interact and use facilities or unions, not Pixel Core specific? So there's a lot of things about. Depends on where you're working. So one of the things you want to do is figure out who the people are. Now you're going to want to do walkthroughs. If we're doing a stream on location somewhere, you got to find out what the rules of engagement are. You got to find out. You got to do walkthroughs. Typically, if we're in town, especially for something really big, we're going to do walkthroughs weeks ahead of time, and you're going to try to make sure that you know where you're going to be. You know how much power. A lot of times that's working with your management agency. So we work with. The three main companies that we do work with is George P. Johnson, Jack Morton, and Opus Productions. And so those are the three that we work with. And typically we're in communication with them for weeks before the event, making sure that we know where we're going to be and they know how many cameras. We're constantly going through that in email. You want to knock down as many things as possible so that no one's surprised once they get there. Sometimes there's a lot of phone calls, a lot of go-to meetings. And then you're going to go back and forth. Of course, you're going to work with the facility there to find out what they have. Sometimes you're using their fiber. Sometimes you're using their electricity. Sometimes you're using their internet. We also, when you start getting at the scale that we're working at, you're typically working with an internet vendor. And so I want to say StoopTech is our vendor, but I don't think that's their full name, but that's what their email is. So that's what I think of it as, Carlos. Anyway, but you have a vendor that is going to manage a lot of that stuff for you. Oh, we're bringing out the big case too. Yeah, we're going to show you a case that it's not very impressive now because we don't have anything in it. But anyway, so when you're dealing with the vendor here. Or all these pieces, you do have to figure out what those rules of engagement are. Now, in many, many facilities, if you're doing something that's more than just a little handheld thing, it's going to require union labor. Now, in New York, it might be local 1. In San Francisco, here, it's local 16. And it just depends on where you are as far as what local is managing it. And you're going to need to talk to them about it. Now, there's a couple different ways you can handle that. Typically, you're going to be hiring union members to do a lot of these pieces. Some of them will know how to use the hardware you're using. Some of them won't. And so one of the things that you have to take into account is sometimes you can have them shadow you. You're still hiring a union person, but you're actually doing the mixing and for the key pieces. And sometimes you'll find people that have all those skill sets. We're working actually in conjunction with Local 16.
Stream hiccup.
We're having a stream hiccup?
Yes, we're restarting it right now.
Oh, we're restarting the stream here for a second. Hey, what happened?
It was my fault. I plugged headphones into the stream machine because there was a note on audio clipping. The audio sounds everywhere. The audio sounds good everywhere, so I plugged headphones into the stream machine.
And it blew up.
And it did.
What did it do?
Red question mark.
That's what causes that.
Actually, I plugged in the headphones and nothing happened. But when I took the headphones back out,
I wonder if that's it. Are you sure you did that into the mic or into the?
There's a little green thing with headphones right at the bottom of the shuttle, and I thought, oh, that's
Interesting.
headphones.
Yeah.
And I
So the big thing with those boxes is don't touch them once they're running.
Yeah, for real. Don't
Yeah.
touch them at all.
That's why we're not taking them. So
I thought headphones would be safe.
Yeah.
My fault.
okay, so we're back up.
I'll let you know when we're back. Oh, okay.
So we're talking about live streaming, and our stream actually hiccuped. And what happened is that we have these shuttles that we're running out of, that we're running Wirecast out of. We use Wirecast for our streaming, and the shuttles have become something that we're still using here a little bit. And our Macs are shuttles are these little PC boxes, and our Macs are they're in the shipping cases, and we're renting some for London. We've decided to move away from PC streaming, at least through Wirecast. We find that on the PC side, we're finding that the quality of the image is not as nice as it. And we're also finding these shuttles who have been traveling for a year, they've been being literally shuttled all over the world in boxes, are starting to become a little more fragile. And so we've taken them out of the mix for clients, but we're still using them as backup here, and you just experience what happens when we do that and why we're not using them in mainline streams anymore. One of the things we're really excited about is the Thunderbolt connections that are going to be available from both Blackmagic and AJA, because these are going to allow us theoretically to input SDI streams directly into Mac Minis, which the new Mac Minis, some of our tests have shown that we believe that they will be able to stream very, very high quality streams very, very effectively. So we're actually pretty excited about that. So anyway, so that was a little bit of a hiccup, but that's what happens with live streaming, and that's why we do these, is so that we can work through that. So anyway, so one of the questions that we had is what is our data rate? And the data rate that we're using typically is a 1 megabit stream, I believe. I think that's typically the stream that we're using. Now, when we stream multiple streams, we'll typically break that to 1 megabit, and then usually and then 600. And well, I mean, the video is actually 300, 600, 900, and then you add another either 64 or 96 over top of that for your audio. So you end up with like 400, 700, and a megabit. So those are usually the three qualities that we do if we're doing a dynamic stream. And if we're doing a single stream, then it's just the 900 and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where we kind of set those things right now, which for this actually works out pretty well. So let me show you one more mixer, and then I'm going to get to some more questions here. This is and we'll see how this box is basically a studio in a can, or in a briefcase here. And this used to be our mainline mixer. And here we go. Let's see. I think that the overhead camera should be able to see this. So you open this up, and what you'll see on the other side, let's see here. Let me pull this in here. So, what you can see here is this is the whole mixer. Now, this is a Data Video HS2000, and I don't know if they still sell these. I couldn't find them on their website the other day. We have 2 of them, and we actually still use them a lot. And one of the cool things is if I can pull this a little bit further forward, let me pull this in a little bit. One of the things you'll see is, yeah, you can't have the camera guys talking to me. So so the one of the things that you'll see here is that if you go from the overhead here, is up at the very top. We've got actual buttons here that these buttons here actually allow me to call. I can actually have a mic and talk to the guys that are. And what we're actually mixing this show with today is the other one of these. So this is actually what we're using. So anyway, so the guys are sitting on mics. And they are, and then I have a little tally. So there's a little red light that goes above this camera, so I know that that I'm talking to you right now. And I have the reason sometimes I look like I'm talking just below is I have a confidence monitor that sits right below that, so that I can see what you're actually cutting. So anyway, so so when you look at this now, it's got an audio mixer over here. We've never used it. It's totally worthless as far as I'm concerned. And so what we really care about is all of this here. Now what we like is that the whole monitor is built in. It all comes together. What is a little bit of a hardship here is that it's slightly larger than a carry-on, which means that we then have to put it in a giant case if we want to ship it. And so if we want to put it in a giant case, we might as well use the Panasonic, so the big one. So anyway, so that's kind of the piece there. Now, what I will say, though, is it's great because that intercom is built in. The intercom and tally being built in turns out to be really key. Put that down. So the intercom and tally turns out to be really key because it is it turns out to be really a great thing because it just allows you to set up a crew really fast, and that all works out really well. So anyway, we like that a lot, and we use it a lot, especially when you want to set up quickly on the road and still have all that communication with your guys, and you don't have a bunch of extra boxes. Tally and intercom tend to be this whole extra pile of stuff that you have to deal with, and we don't have to deal with it because we have this little guy here. So we've been really happy with it, the HS2000. We've been really happy with all the mixers that we've been slowly collecting. We do software mixes, so when I do internal stuff for the Pixel Core, I'm using Wirecast's actual editing stuff, and we're looking at testing the TriCaster as well. They haven't sent us one to test, so that's why we haven't tested it. Many of you have asked. So let me get some of the questions here, and then we're going to come back and talk about a couple other things. I've got something to show you. Oh man, let me see here. So top question here: how do you deal with audio through the mixing chain? Okay, that's a great question. So I don't have one that I can just pull out at the moment. But what we do is all of our audio tends to go into a Sound Devices 788. And if it's somewhere near the Surface, Kevin, in a box, it'll be in one of the shipping boxes. Jeff is going to be like, "Oh my gosh, they're tearing apart my shipping box." We take a Sound Devices 788T, and all of our inputs tend to run into that. Now it does a couple of different things. If we're getting a bunch of mic inputs and so on and so forth, it allows us to put limiters on them and so on. Make that a little bit better. But it also allows it to reroute everything. So it's got a router in there that lets us say, okay, we're going to take these channels and send them out to these outs, and these ins to send out to those outs. And so we can reroute all the audio that's coming in and out very effectively. It's deep water. It's not something that's really easy. Now we use a series of mixers as well, typically Mackie mixers. Now once that's done, the audio, we don't manage any audio as we go through as it goes through the chain. You can go ahead and bring the 788 out. That'd be great. And so here we'll show you this guy here. So so here's the 788 here, and so this is what it looks like upside down. This is what it looks like right side up. And so you have your controls over your audio, and these are kind of cool because you pop them open and they just pop out, and you can control it. Really built solidly. So you've got 8 inputs that are there. And then you have 4 inputs through 8. Yes, you have all the inputs, but 4 solid inputs on the back here. And again, this gives us a lot of control. There's actually a control interface that we can connect to that as well, that we like a lot. And it's our favorite piece of sound equipment. This is a very expensive solution. This is about, I think, $5,500 or $6,500. But it's very, very compact, which is important for us when we're traveling. We don't want to take a big mixer. Now, if you're going to be in a studio, you can really consider a Mackie mixer, something like one of the 12 channels or something like that. You want to make sure that you have at least 6 XLR inputs for microphones. So anyway, so that all gets mixed down either in a big mixer or something smaller like this. And then right at the very end, there's a couple different ways to bind that audio and video together. Now this will also run through a sound. Yeah, if you can bring that out. And is the delay over there? Is there a delay over there? Haha. See, right when Kevin was about to step forward, I tripped him up. So you can either bind the audio into your recording device. So we'll bind the audio with something like a Key Pro. We record a lot on the Key Pro. We're going to be testing the Pix 240, which is sound devices as well, soon. But we bind the audio with the Key Pro right now. So you can bind the audio there. That means it's going to add all the audio there at the end. So when you're going through the whole video chain, the audio is not involved. And then right at the very end, we go and put them together. Now there is a problem with that, and that is that audio generally does not slow down as it's going through the entire chain. It's very light. Video is not that way. And so what happens is that you need to delay that audio as it comes through. Now this is one way to delay it. This is a hardware device, data video. I'll turn it over here. Data videos here. This is a sound delay box, and so it's not on, so you can't see anything. But what you end up having is a way to slow things down by 70 milliseconds or 80 milliseconds or whatever. It says Japanese here because sometimes we've had two different languages streaming at the same time, and this was the delay for the Japanese one the last time we were in Japan, which wasn't too long ago. So now the other way to bind this is to use something like this. This is an audio to SDI, and so what this is a little converter that'll go audio to SDI. And that'll bind your audio together. Both Blackmagic and AJA make these. We have this one here. We have the other thing is for like all these confidence monitors, for instance, we use a mixture of everything. So we have the Key Pro from AJA. We happen to get this one from Blackmagic. All these monitors get SDI sent to them, and then we're using these little AJA boxes to go from SDI back to HDMI. We like to try to keep everything in an SDI feed. Because it's just much easier to manage. Once you start doing a lot of production, you get really testy about HDMI and DVI, which are just a pain in the neck. So you just want everything to go to SDI, and then at the very end we go, okay, now we're gonna cut that out. So I'm gonna jump to some more of the questions that you have here. What are the bare minimal lighting rigs that you need? So the bare minimum lighting rigs that you need, China balls work really well. In fact, I will show you this. China balls are kind of the cheap, fast way to get stuff done if you don't have a lot of backing. Let me show you. This was something that was used as an example. So check this out. So if we jump to the screen here, I guess let me see if I can stretch this out a little bigger. I think it's not a very big image. But if you look at this, these are the biggest China balls we've ever used. This is from a company called Airstar. And so what these are is two giant 6-foot balls that have 6 lights inside of them. And they make a really nice big soft light, which I like, and makes everybody look good. Of course, you can make miniature versions of that. In my house, a lot of the streams that I do are with lit with China balls. That's the easiest kind of like I just want to turn something on and have it work. You can get on Amazon, if you go up there and search for 105 watt CFL. You'll see these really big, powerful CFLs that are 56K or 5,000. They're a little bit green, but they're overall pretty good. And you can put those inside of a China ball, and it's an incredible amount of light without blowing all your circuits and blowing your wallet and everything else. Putting those in, really get a couple China balls, throw those guys in the middle, and you're going to find like 3 or 4 of them are going to light it up as much as you need to, and everything looks great. There's obviously a lot of love that you can give lighting, and you should give lighting, and you want to get good at it, and you want to figure out all the little ins and outs. But if you're getting started, that's a great place to start as far as doing that. Questions about what are good lower-end, almost free solutions for chroma keying live. So, and this is from James Wilkinson. The keying live is generally something that most of these mixers have some facility for. Now, the HS2000 doesn't do it very well. It just has a Luma key. But the 50, this HS50 here, does do a chroma key. And the Panasonic does an incredibly good chroma key. As I said, it's a very high-end keyer. So there's a variety of options here as far as being able to get a high-quality key out of your system. The big thing is that if you're going to run through the chroma keyer that's built into your mixer, also things like Boinks and Wirecast will both, and TriCaster will all do a chroma key as well. The thing you have to understand, other than the Panasonic, which is a little bit more robust, the rest of them are just doing a straight chroma key. It's very low quality, in my opinion. You can get reasonably good keys. The main thing is light it well. And we've talked about green screen in the past. You might want to look back on one of our old ones talking about green screen. But you really want to think about that, of doing a high quality green screen. So lighting it really evenly. The more evenly lit it is, even these lower quality chroma keyers can actually take full advantage of it, or take a fair bit more advantage of it. So a well lit one will actually let you get away with a lot. A lot of people light it badly, and then they use a bad chroma key, and then a chroma keyer that isn't very powerful, and then they can't figure out why everything looks bad. Well, you have to do one or the other. You can't do both. Yeah, if you're looking for some of these videos and some of our old videos, you can go to youtube.com/pixelcore is where you want to go, and you're going to see our channel. Subscribe to the channel. You can see a whole bunch of other videos. We're constantly putting these up, so definitely check that out as we move forward. Another question that we had here is Wi-Fi. Are you streaming from remote primarily on a Wi-Fi hotspot, Wi-Fi hotspot based, or hardline? And the answer is that we are almost always using a hardline. So it's really important to get the best connection. Wi-Fi is not good enough. You want to make sure that you're streaming from we do it in an emergency, in a pinch, but generally we're always focused on hard lines. So that's going to give you that solid connection. You always want twice as much bandwidth as you think you need. You need that headroom because it's always going to vary, and what you want to do is if you go up to speedtest.net and run it, you don't want to just look at the bandwidth you're getting, because it'll tell you what the maximum bandwidth is. You want to look at that little graph. That little graph becomes very important. If you see a graph that goes like this, you're going to want a lot of extra bandwidth because it means it's not stable. If you see a graph that pops up and just goes straight across, then you're probably okay with twice as much. If you see it bouncing, you're going to want 3 or 4 times as much bandwidth as you're using. Typically, we're asking for a minimum when we walk in 10 megabits per second. Symmetrical is what we want to see for us to be able to guarantee what we're doing. Another question here, this is from Tom Wineland. What do you think about the ATEM switchers from Blackmagic? I don't have a solid opinion about it yet because I haven't played with them. So that's all I got to say. Brent Schnarr, who is on again, off again here, he's right now, I think he's in Botswana taking video of elephants or something. So, but Brent has one, and we're almost going to test it, and then we haven't been able to test it. So I don't know. I think in concept, I think it's revolutionary. I think that separating the idea that the control interface is something you buy separately from the server, and making a server so small. I mean, it's doing so much work in this little panel is revolutionary, and I'm very excited about testing them. And we haven't had one in here long enough to make that work yet. Hopefully Blackmagic will let us borrow one for a couple weeks to see how it works, but or Brent will bring his back and then we'll play with his. So we haven't really gotten to take it through its paces yet. But I am excited about the idea. Gear rigs. Do you rig all the boxes, switches, gear in a rack mount, or is it just whatever works? Okay, so let's bring out the rig. It's going to look a little stretched. It's going to look a little stripped down right now because we just pulled it out because it has to go somewhere. But here's one rig. And Kevin, why don't you roll it over here and take this HS2000 away? So this is when we're doing local ones. This is usually full of gear. So what you have here is, if we look down here, we've got this is the video hub that we have. Now this is a 16 by 32, and so you have a 16 by 32, 16 ins, 32 outs. These are just spacers. Now typically, this doesn't look very exciting. Typically we have the Panasonic server down here, 2 Key Pros, and then up here we have a confidence monitor that is another. It's the smart monitors and this was all built out a day ago, but we are leaving soon. Now, one of the things that we did on the back here that's useful is if you look at this here, what you have is this is simply a feed through connector. So all this is and I'll show you those. Great. All these is just a BNC on one side and a BNC on the other, and it's in a panel. The reason that we do this is because the panel in the back is fragile, this one inexpensive. This one is less fragile and not very expensive. So we hook all of our cabling to this, and then we have this available so that the stagehands or us or whoever is going to be doing it can simply put this in, and we don't feel too sensitive about it. Also, these are a lot further apart, so you don't need a trumpeter to put them together. So that's another little bit of our boxes. We're slowly building a lot more into these boxes because it makes it a lot faster. And what happens is, as soon as we figure out how to do something simple, we just make it more complicated. I was talking about these. These are, we're pushing Jeff here. Jeff is, so this guy is the confidence monitor that we got from Blackmagic. These are a great value. They're about $650, I think, for the panel, but that's 2 of these, and they're SDI in, and so it's really, really great. And we hook these to the AJA Key Pros so that we have a confidence monitor. We can see what's going through them. The reason you see PGM and clean is that we typically have one Key Pro capturing a program, another one capturing a clean feed. That way, if we screw up the graphics, we can fix it later. And so that's, you always record 2. So anyway, outside of that, I'm not going to have them bring out the cases. But we have a ton of Pelican cases that we actually use. So each Pelican case, there's different stream boxes with different configurations of foam, and we try to stay mostly in that configuration when we're packing them. And so for instance, we're going to London. We're taking 4 of those boxes with us, and then in those boxes we have to, and we take those. Anytime we go in the air, we have to go into those boxes. We can't ship this guy. So one of the other things we have to deal with is a thing called a carnet. So you start taking real equipment out of the country, and you end up needing to have one of these. Now this is a carnet here, and it's called ATA carnet. Maybe we'll get an overhead of this, Jeff. And so what you have here is, pull this back here, is it's a trade service of the United States Council of International Business. And what they've done is there's this collection of countries, and you can't read it here, which is fine, but there's a whole bunch of countries here that are part of the countries that have signed up for this. Now what this is we have all of our equipment down here with all the serial numbers, and then we have all these foils here. And so what ends up happening is, as I leave the country, someone in the U.S. Customs has to sign this and says, yeah, all this stuff is here. And then when I get to my next country, someone signs this and says, yes, it entered the country. And then when I get to my next country, they say, yes, it exited the country. And then it gets to the next, and then it comes back to the United States, and they sign it again. And the idea is that there's a paper trail, there's a connection for all of these things. And so this carnet kind of keeps you in good standing. Otherwise there's no good way to move, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 worth of equipment in and out of the country without paying some crazy customs on all the countries involved. And so this says, I am taking this stuff into your country, I am taking it out, we went through all the paperwork, we paid lots of money, we've got a bond, we've got all this other stuff, and that's what that is. So we work with a company called, it's called Boomerang, Boomerang Freight Solutions, and they are out of Chicago, and I don't know what we do without Boomerang. Don't call these guys ATA, Carnet, or whatever. The Carnet system in New York, don't call them. Don't. Anyway, so the reason you don't want to call them is because they're not really designed to work with consumers. They're definitely not designed to answer your questions. They just are annoyed that you're calling them. They're used to dealing with freight folks that know what they're talking about. And so if you're talking to them directly in New York, you're not going to get a lot of customer service. You work with a company like Boomerang, and these guys are, they are the epitome of quality. It's just, and I guess you can go to atacarnet.com is their website, and but the ones you're actually working with are, these other the Carnet redemption departments or whatever. But you want to go to these guys because if you ever need to do that, because they are the bomb. All right, so let's see other questions here. So the carnet helps you get in and out, and you'll really complain about how complex the carnet is and how much of a pain in the neck it is until you go to a country that doesn't have a carnet, and then you realize that you have to hire somebody to make it go away. You have to hire someone local that knows all the rules, and then you sign stuff and send it to customs, and there's these weird sending an invoice in that they can then stamp and then have someone at customs do it, and it's just complicated. This is one way to do it the whole time. There's not a bunch of different rules, and it's really awesome. So another question. This is from I think it's Baitka, I believe, or Bietka. When you are doing TWIP in your backyard a couple weeks ago, you were using a Steadicam wirelessly. How did you stream the SDI signal? So it was actually an HDMI signal, but that is using the Teradek. And that was a test that we were doing, which is a Teradek. It's like a little pack of cards that has a little antenna, and we can stream that stuff directly to Wirecast. Wirecast can see that new 4.1 can see the Teradeks directly. So that's where that came from, and it's really nifty. We haven't decided whether it's stable enough to use it for paying clients, but we are playing around with it right now. So that's kind of where we're at there. Lower thirds. Do you add anything to the stream outputs like lower thirds, or is this sort of done for post? Any rigs for doing live stream overlays that work relatively flawlessly? Yeah, so this is from Vince Bauer. So we do lower thirds. There's two different ways that we do them. One is with Keynote, Apple's Keynote, which is pretty awesome. What you do is you render out, you go into Motion or After Effects or whatever, and you build your lower third, and everything's spinning and popping out and everything else. You take that graphic and you render it over green. It sounds crazy. And then you take it in and you put it into Keynote, and then you can animate all the text, and you can set up in the advanced settings in Keynote. You can go in there and say, okay, after the movie starts playing, wait for 1 second or half a second or whatever, and then start playing the text. And you time it so that the text all rolls out at the same time, and that's how you do that. Now, the other program that we've been doing, we've been pre-rendering them all and using a program that I recommended on MacBreak called Playback Pro, and Playback Pro Plus is actually what we use. And it just caches up videos and plays them out. So if you play a lot of mixture of videos and graphics and everything else, now all of the graphics that we want to overlay are all over green, then we key that out with our mixer, which we are pretty cavalier about because our mixer is so good at it. But you have to be kind of careful to get that pure green to work. So that's how we handle the lower thirds. The next question here is Edirol. And this is from Mark Mirovich, and he says, what are your thoughts on the lower cost Edirol switchers like the V4 and the V8? The V4 and the V8, I believe, if I'm not incorrect, are standard def mixers. And the reason I don't know anything about them is that our entire pipeline is HD. And so I don't know anything about SD mixers. As soon as I see an SD mixer, I just stop researching it because we don't have a pipeline to do that. I mean, I don't even know how to. There's two things that we don't do very well. We don't do interlace, and we don't do standard def anymore. It's not part of our pipeline. So I don't have a good answer for you. Sorry. I'm sure that they're fine, but we don't know how to deal with them. So what do you mean working with unions? What are examples of projects that would require labor from another team? What kind of jobs? This is from Evan Wilson. So basically, what happens is that the union usually has when you're dealing in a convention center and sometimes hotels, they kind of own the space. So you have to they have agreements with those locations that it's going to be union. And there are obviously there's some political issues there, but it's also that it ensures that people who work there all the time, and it's not a lot of people playing with everybody's equipment and that kind of thing. The one thing about union guys is they tend to know how to take care of the equipment fairly well, and so a lot of times that makes it a little bit more effective there. So a lot of times you're required to do that. Some unions are a little bit more stringent or flexible about allowing you to shadow. So if you have certain equipment that they've never used before, a lot of times you can actually get someone to just sit behind you and make sure you don't do anything crazy. But typically you want to have the union guys working on the stuff. So if they're and if it's running a camera or moving stuff, that kind of thing around, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are in the union that know how to do that. So then you work with that. But there are certain rules, and then there's a whole set of rules about hiring them, and that's a whole nother talk, and it's just a matter of, there's a bunch of rules, and if you do it well and make friends with the union, a lot of things go much smoother. So, it's definitely something that's worth researching and finding just a way to manage it. A lot of people, I think early on we used to resist it a lot. And now we've developed some pretty good relationships with some of the unions that we work with, and once you work it out, it actually is a pretty straightforward process. It's just a matter of knowing what the rules are. That people need breaks at certain times, and they need to be cut at certain times. They need to be doing things at certain times, and just a lot of rules that you need to manage. And you generally want a producer to manage that. You don't want to just willy-nilly do it, or it gets real expensive real quick. Wirecast. This is from Tom Wineland. What improvements would you like to see in the next version of Wirecast, like the interface? Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things that with Wirecast. I mean, it is a overall, I think it's great. One of the other things I didn't mention is that you can do audio delay in Wirecast now, so you can do a lot of your audio delay adjustments actually in the application, which is pretty exciting. So that was a big upgrade there. On the PC side, I think that they need to work on some of the color space stuff that's going on with their streams. I would, and I'm sure that I have a bunch of other things that I'd like to get from them, and I'm blanking out on some of those at the moment. The things that we would love to see is things getting a little bit more hardened, where there could be some real frame enforcement with Wirecast. This would allow us to record or to pass everything through Wirecast and actually add all of our graphics and do all that stuff. The reason we don't do that is because Wirecast, if we want a solid 720p signal, 5994, everything exactly right so that we can hand it off to the BBC or to CBS or whatever, we need to run it through a standard mixer that's not going to go back and forth on some of the frames there. As far as the interface goes, it works pretty well. As far as going through, there's a lot of little things. Changing the names is a little bit takes a little bit of time. It'd be nice to be able to set up preferences where we can say, okay, every time I add something, I want this audio to be overriding all those things. Those would be, that would be a nice thing to have. There's a little bit of a limitation on being able to auto cue stuff to USB controllers, but it's fine. It's just you have to make everything cam 1, cam 2, cam 3, cam 4 the same with a different number, and then you hit option, and then you tie that to a contour shuttle or whatever, and then you can start switching stuff quickly, which is kind of cool. But it would be nice to have that be just a little bit more automatic. I'll see if I can think of other things, but those are some of the things that we'd like to see. Overall, we still think it's the best solution that we've used as far as putting stuff together, as far as a one-man show kind of thing that you can run on your computer. Using DV Garage's conduit in live stream processing. How to use conduit in your live processing chain so that it can also be streamed out to the internet live. The way we do that right now is that you take the raw stream and run it into conduit, and then you run DVI or whatever output you have out of conduit into your mixer. So it's passing through. Now you're going to lose some frames. You're going to lose 3 or 4 frames as you go through that process, and so you have to kind of account for that in frame delay. But you can then get a live key that's very high quality that then is going out back to the mixer that is keyed. So that's how you do it in conduit. Let's see here. In conduit, you can just go out to the second monitor full screen, and then you're just passing to the mixer. Mics. What works best for mics, both talent and handheld? Any wireless mics used? So we're using this. The one I'm talking into right now is a Sennheiser ENG 100. It's not what I would consider the best one. It works fine in here for the most part. The best ones are electrosonic. Makes the best body packs and so on and so forth. If we're really doing mission critical stuff, the stuff we were doing before, this is the little mic that comes with the Sennheiser. Also, if you're in a louder environment, we might use a Countryman E6, which you can also get a connection for stuff like this little ENG 100. The electrosonics are a lot more expensive, 3 or 4 times as expensive, but they are 3 or 4 times as good. So if you're really doing stuff that's mission critical, we'll tend to move to electrosonic for most of those things. Otherwise, we're using these little Sennheisers because they're less expensive. And then for handheld, we will typically use a SM58, Shure SM58, and then if we need it to be wireless, we will tend to use a mic plug, which just pops into the bottom. It's a little ball, like a little square at the bottom that then turns it into a wireless. And you can get a set. The ENG 100 set has the body pack that I'm using, but it also has that other piece as well. So that's what we use for the mics. Cable runs. What is the longest cable run between streaming stations that you've gotten away with? I'm interested if you run one station or mix of streaming stations across a site. Follow up, what about handheld cameras? So are you leveraging those as well? This is from Vince Bauer. Yeah, so the longest run we've run between 2 stations, and still we try to stream out of one location because it's usually we have a lot of extra streaming boxes. Just in case one goes down, sometimes we're running 2 different streams off of them, a primary and a backup, so on and so forth. To do that, we have a tendency to try to keep them all centralized. And then if we have to do it in different locations with different mixes, we'll have, like we've had the lower, recently we had the HS2000, which we showed you earlier, passing over fiber to our, and came in as an input into our Panasonic 450. That the two stage studios were about a quarter mile apart. So we're basically calling shots quarter mile away and then adding graphics and everything else and streaming to the web in another location. That's the longest distance that we've done. The big thing there is just coordination, making sure that you have good comms. One of the things we did not have is great comms on that one. We thought wireless comms would work, and they didn't because it was too far away, underground, through concrete and metal. And so we didn't really have a solid one. We ended up on a long phone call. We ran up a lot of minutes on AT&T. And it worked out fine, but we are researching some, based on Brian Dodd's, who's a Pixel member, suggestion. We're looking at some of the fiber solutions for next year to make sure that does happen. It doesn't happen very often, but that was one of the big things, is making sure that it actually worked. We do handheld cameras, and then we run them either to other fiber drops, or the longest you want to take an SDI feed generally is about 300 feet. If it's a good SDI cable, you can get them up to 1,000 or 1,500 feet, but you're kind of pushing it, and especially if you're in a live environment where you don't know what's around you and you can't control it. 300 feet is about as far as you can go. And then you can run it into like an AJA 3G HD, and it's a splitter, but it'll also reclock the signal and amplify it again so that you can run it another 300 feet. So those are other things that you could do to kind of keep things straightened out. Low light. This is from Vince Bauer again. Any low light shoots, like a keynote room where dimmed lighting, do you attempt any streaming from such environments, and do you prefer it out in the open? Yeah, so I mean, low light is a very common challenge, and one of the things that we use a lot on EX3s or higher is what's called an RMB 150 and an RMB 750 that allows us to control the shading live. And so literally someone looking at the monitor and tuning the cameras as people are walking in and out of pools of light. It's a slightly more complicated process, but it does work. But that's why you buy bigger cameras rather than smaller cameras. Smaller cameras are great as long as the lighting's good. The cameras I use at my house look awesome, and they are $500 cameras. They're HV20s and HV40s and that kind of thing. They're cheap cameras, and they're great kind of dumb heads to make everything work. But once you start having to do it for pay, then you start slowly buying. Like the EX1s and EX3s that we use are the tiny cameras. The vendors that we work with tend to bring bigger cameras. The ones we were using last week were these Sony 1500s, which are 444 2/3 inch cameras. They're pretty nice. Question from Tom Wineland. This is do you ever use VJ software for some of your more creative shows, say an after party, etc.? VJ software like Resolume Avenue 4, Module 8, or Mad Mapper, and we haven't. And I am so dying to do that. That's all I have to say. We definitely want to do some more of that. We want to play with that stuff, and I just haven't had a show that was that made it worth it. We were editing I was doing some cutting on a concert last week, but I didn't get to do any effects. I kind of wish I did. Flex fill. Have you ever used a flex fill in low light? I'm assuming you're talking about something that pops open, and we use those a lot. Getting a little bit of bounce to kind of even things out is great. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about. You'll have to ask another question if it's not. And that was from Tara Alexander. But yeah, we definitely try to light people up a little bit with some bounce, and it's a great way to kind of fill everything out if you can. A lot of times you can't afford to bring lights, or you don't have the room, and so on and so forth. And so those are the things that we have to worry about there. Simple front audio control mixer. So keeping up with your class, watching TV, listening to the FM is causing me to juggle audio inputs on my amp. Do you recommend an audio mixer with multiple inputs that handle about 6 devices, that is front-facing, something the size of a normal receiver. You know, we've used some of those. We find that those aren't the highest quality. We haven't found a really high-quality front-facing mixer. You know, that's been the real challenge, is not really finding something that we were really happy with. PreSonus makes some stuff that's great because it goes to FireWire and you have little knobs. But we haven't found anything that we've been super happy with as far as front-facing, except for something like the sound devices. But we haven't found a mixer that, you know, we had an Alesis that we used for a long time back in the day, and it slowly fell apart. And you know, it's just that was the last one we tried. Wires everywhere. This is from Vince Bauer. The last one, by the way, was from Shane Smith, and we're getting close. If you're watching this, one of the things you want to know is that we're getting close to the end of our questions. So if you have questions, you better ask them, or we're going to just stop the feed. Just warning you. All right. So the wires everywhere. What do you do to keep your wires clean and mean? It must be a challenge to keep tripping over critical data lines or camera cables. What is the standard procedure on a live site? So it's kind of hard to show them here, but you know, one of the things we do is we try to keep all the wires have some order. So, and there's a whole talk about that, not crossing power over, or not running power with signals and crossing at 90 degrees. Those are all things that are important. But the other thing is that you want to make sure that your wires aren't wrangling back and forth. So on long runs, we'll try to really run them in 90 degrees as much as we can. Now, when you're in a big production facility, you end up eventually with some kind of nest. But you do the best you can on in between to keep them running parallel to each other, running them long, mostly straight. And then what that allows you to do is fix them if you have to DX things later. The more control you can have on your wiring, and the more order you bring to your wiring, the less insane. If I push this back a little bit, you'll see it in the jib. There's some very fine work down here that Kevin went through. You see, it's a very proud moment. You know, I turn it this way, and we'll see if we can't show it there. But this is, but by keeping, you can't really see it that well. But by keeping the order, he's done a very good job there of doing that. And by keeping that order, it's very easy for us to figure out what's going on. More questions here. The Blackmagic has a comm. This is from Adam Powell. Blackmagic has a comm camera feed over optical fiber where you can run up to 45 kilometers. And it's not shipping. Not that I'm bitter about it. Sorry. That's all I got to say. We can't wait to play with that thing. You know, it's got basically what he's talking about is there's a connector that you'll basically be able to have fiber over the connection, and then it carries a return video. It takes the HDSDI, tally, you know, all these things, and you can run them. You can run them in serial. It's a great little box, and it's not shipping yet, unless, as far as I know. And I'm really frustrated because I would buy 3 or 4 of them if it was, because it's awesome. Disk storage. What is the best? What is used for best data capture in terms of disk drives? Do you use portables or something more hefty? This is from Vince Bauer. So we typically, right now, our standard is using an AJA KeyPro. So we capture the KeyPros, KeyPro Minis. You know, those are the kind of the things that we capture to. Oftentimes 3 or 4 of them at a time. And so we use the KeyPros a lot for that type of solution. Then we copy those. And depending on what we're doing, we typically copy them to G-Safe drives, G-Tech G-Safe drives. Problem with it is ours has gotten a little wonky. We're not sure exactly why. It's just unhappy. So our G-Safe drive is a little unstable, but which is always scary. It's not unstable with the data. It can be funny about the connections. And so, but what's great is it's a RAID 1, which means it's mirroring. And that means that when you copy everything, you're making 2 copies immediately, and then you pull them out and give them to 2 different people, and then we have some redundancy. And so that's what we try to do as best we can. Outside of that, if you have a lot of drives and you have 2 different computers, you can use 2 just rugged drives or whatever. Copy everything to 1 set of drives and then swap, you know, copy, like we're going to do one where we're doing 4 recordings at the same time. So we'll copy 2 of them to each set, and then we'll swap the drives and copy the 2 to the next one. So it's twice as fast as doing them all one by one through all those drives. HDMI, we almost always capture in pairs minimum to make sure that we capture it. Now, we also capture in H.264 using the Blackmagic H.264 recorder to drive, and those are just the Mac Minis. It's not really a drive-intensive process to capture at 5 megabits a second. Computers. What are your favorite computers you use for streaming shoots? This is from Tom Wineland. We've been using these shuttles. I think they're falling apart. I think they've had it. So the shuttles won't be used much longer for us. We'll probably use them as little servers or something like that. They'll do something useful. We don't want them to feel too unloved, but I don't think they can go on the road anymore. Their legs just aren't there anymore. Right now we're using Mac Pros, which is a real pain in the neck because it's just a lot of computer to just do a simple stream. We found that the laptops don't have quite enough horsepower to send out 3 streams, which we need to, and not get tapped out every once in a while, so the Mac Pros make more sense. But we do think that the new Mac Minis, ironically, should be able to do that well, but we need a Thunderbolt connection to make that work, and so we're trying to kind of sort those issues out at the moment. And we're waiting for the Thunderbolt connectors to do that. But we're really excited about the idea of having a bunch of Mac Minis stacked up to do all the streaming. Monitor sync. What do you use to keep the monitors all in similar settings? What happens when you set something and move it? Do you have to recalibrate, or is there a gizmo to help you do that? So there is it's called a DVI detective. And what it is a little box. I don't have it here, but it's a little box. You have a DVI in and a DVI out. I hear Kevin moving around. He may be looking for it. He knows where it is. Fantastic. So what this does, oh, look at that. Oh, that's not it. You can give me that too, but I'm not looking for the extender. I'm looking for the DVI detective. So it's got a DVI in and a DVI out, and you plug it into what you want to have it set to, and then you lock it. And then it spoofs that DVI signal from then on. And so what that allows you to do is that anytime you plug that box in, it'll always go to 720p or 1080p or whatever. And so that's the way to manage that. But yeah, monitor sync is a pain. Now, Playback Pro, which is what we use to send the graphics to it, it just takes over that second monitor. It doesn't, it just says, I'm doing 720p, and then that's what it does. So anyway, that's useful. Tara Alexander says Velcro strips, sometimes 10-inch Velcro wraps work with wires. They come in gray, black, and white. Yeah, we use lots of Velcro straps. In fact, it's standard operating procedure for us to have every cable that we have, or just about every cable, is labeled as ours, and it has a Velcro strap on it. And it just allows us to wrap it, but it also lets us connect cables to each other when we need to. So that, yeah, we definitely use Velcro straps a lot. You can get them in these rounds that are just 1,000 of them all in one big thing. You just kind of peel them off like onions. And it's very effective. The next question is from Chris Tuttle. It says, have you HTTP streaming to iOS devices using Apple's Media Stream Segmenter? We need to test that, and we haven't. That's all I got to say. We just haven't had time to use the Apple segmenter. We should work. What we've been really looking at is what we've been testing is using the Wowza server to do that segmenting for us, and that is very effective. So Wowza is a great is a great thing. We're not going to get into Wowza, but it allows you to take one stream and convert it to lots of different things very effectively. And so it's WOWZA. Wowza, and definitely want to check that out if you're looking for lots of streaming formats. And according to Adam Powell, according to Blackmagic, it's shipping in September. Yeah, I know. It's just September was a couple weeks too late. That's all I'm saying. Not that I'm bitter. Next question from Vince Bauer. How easy is it to work? How is it working with walk-on talent? What are the problems? So the big thing you get into when you have guests in an environment where they haven't had a lot of experience is mostly just them understanding that there's the big thing that you have to understand and you have to make clear to the guests that are going to be on is that there is this huge engine of people. We had at one point up to 30 people working all at the same time, last week. There's this huge engine that's turning around the production, and all of it's focused on the people. So what happens is people move a little bit this way, move a little bit this way, and the whole engine goes raw, and it goes back and forth, and it's so the talent has to understand that they're in the center of that little bit, and when they do little moves, it just has the whole engine. They're not on the outside of the engine; they're in the center of the engine, and when they do it, they're swinging the engine all over the place. And so the key is for the talent to understand that it's really great for them to sit and be still and figure out what they're going to do in a live event, because there's all these other cogs that are trying to keep up with them and try to do what they need to do, and that's the challenge. So it mostly is a matter of explaining that to them, and being really careful about explaining to them what they need to do. Like, you're going to see red lights over a camera. That means that camera is live. That's looking at you. You want to look right into it, like what I'm doing right now. And if I look over here, see now I push them off, but there's red light over here now. And if I look over here. So anyways, but the red lights allow you to kind of figure all of that stuff out. And so that's one of the things that you want to make sure that they just got to be clear what's going on. A lot of times you want to make sure that, especially around a live event, if they're going to be changing quickly, you get them in there, and you try to get them set up so that they are ready to go as fast as possible, and allow them to settle. And that's one of the things you try to do as much as you can. Another question here from Vince. So Vince is the champion, of asking questions. If you want to ask a question, all you got to do is go into the question engine. There's been lots of people putting them in. What is a typical team for a shoot? What are their roles? How many cameramen? Who's the producer? Who does everyone wear it? Or does everyone? We try to not have it be something that is everyone wearing a different hat. There's a handful of us that tend to be kind of Johnny on the spot, kind of making things happen, and then the rest of them are, you'll have a camera person for just about every camera, typically. You'll have an editor. You'll have a producer for every location to make sure that things are kind of moving forward. You'll also have production assistants who are going to just kind of glue everything together, and they become very valuable to the production. It's really tempting not to have production assistants, and it's really not a good idea. So so those production assistants help glue all that stuff together. And then you'll have typically a content producer. You will have sometimes you'll have usually one or two audio people. For a stage event, you kind of want to have two audio people, one person to run the board and another person to make sure all the audio is working on stage. If you have that person running the board out there doing the audio stuff, a lot of bad things happen. So an audio member is very important. So that kind of gives you kind of a sense of it. And if you have two different locations, then you have that for both locations. And then you have people that are running stuff in between, and and then people doing B-roll, and before you know it, it turns into a big crew. So we are at the end of the questions. We have gone through all the questions. If you don't have a question soon, we're going to stop the stream, and then I'm going to have a Rasputin, and then we're all going to talk about this stream. So you've got seconds. Well, and I can't repeat everything that Carolyn just told me. Carolyn's in my ear here. But Evan, thank you very much. I'm really glad you're getting a lot out of Twit and Pixel Core, and that you're teaching, and it's fantastic. And I wish I could repeat what Carolyn said. You know what? By the way, we'll talk about this afterwards. We should have Carolyn. We could have some way to pipe Carolyn into the feed. That would be really cool. SDI. So this is from James Wilkinson. I am new to SDI. Can you give me a quick 101? So SDI is a serial digital interface, and so it's converting your analog signal to digital, and most of these cameras will do it in one way, shape, or form. And so what that does is it goes a lot further. Analog will slowly break down over a line. SDI is going to go a lot further. It's just bits at that point. Now you can have. It's just a BNC cable, so it's typical BNC cable, 75 ohms typically is an HD SDI signal, and then you're going to have you can have standard def or high def or 3G. 3G is theoretically you could do stereo or 444 or whatever. So the SDI can carry a lot of different things. It's just bits at that point. It's just getting converted to bits and shoved down that pipe. It's still copper, so it's going to have a half-life of it's going to go down there and start losing power. It's not fiber that can go for miles. But it can be converted. You can have an SDI converted to fiber, and then the fiber runs, and then it gets unconverted back to SDI, and then it's passed in. And for us, we tend to work in HD SDI most of the time. We try to stay away from other formats just because it tends to be a little bit more robust, and the connections tend to be a little bit more robust. But it's just a format of how your camera works. HDMI can be converted to SDI. DVI can be converted to SDI. They're going to be converted back. There's little boxes that do all of those things. But the SDI is going to run the furthest and be the most robust, in my opinion. Another question here. Bandwidth. This is from Den Smith. You talk about recording everything in HD. What bandwidth HD? So we record, typically we record most things in Apple ProRes LT for most live events because they don't really need to be HQ or anything else. But you can do, obviously if it's a really important event or it's something where the client really wants that. But if it's just going up online, we find that LT is fine. HQ is another way to go if you really want to have that. We used to do that and it just burns up a lot of drive space and we never needed it. So Apple ProRes is what we tend to record to on the Key Pros. And then we record to H.264 with the H.264 recorder at about 5 megabits a second. And that gives us a smaller proxy that we can use for a lot of stuff. Blackmagic switcher, this is from Adam Powell. Blackmagic switcher, have we tested any of the Blackmagic switchers? And the answer is not yet. They haven't sent us any to test, and we haven't been able to get a hold of any yet. So we're very much looking forward to it, but we haven't tested them. I think it's a great idea. We just haven't put our feet on the ground yet. In the beginning, this is from Vince Bauer. Is it just starting out? Is there a bare minimum setup for cameras and gear to get started, or is this really a built up as you go until you reach the sweet spot of gear? Yeah, you can definitely start with smaller things. I mean, the thing is you don't need to have have a it's one of those things that you can start off with just streaming one little camera, a web camera. You can connect 2 web cameras to your computer, and you can do that. I mean, with Wirecast or Boinks or Vid Blaster. So those are all little things that you can do, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then the next step is to figure out. You might want to get a couple different cameras and feed them into a computer. Then you might want to get an inexpensive mixer or one of these little mixers here. We definitely do not go out and buy all this stuff at one time. Every project we buy some more cables and we buy some more stuff and we buy some more. One of the things we do is we kind of allocate. We would normally go into our pocket and we tend to buy more gear. And so that the process continues to improve and the system continues to improve. And so you want to be constantly moving forward and constantly investing. Larger projects have allowed us to buy larger things, and allowed us to kind of move forward through that. But yeah, it's definitely something that every problem, and what we're hoping to do is solve some of those for you. But every time you do it, you go, oh, I got to buy that little tool, or you'll be sitting on set and going, oh, that's a really cool little tool. And those are the kind of things that we want to keep on adding and keep on expanding on. Question from Kyle Glazer: can you take us on a tour of the current setup for this stream? I don't know if we can really do that easily because none of the cameras are really set up for that. They're all kind of tied in. We can kind of turn it around a little bit. Can we? Yeah, let's just turn this one over here. Yeah. You can go to a wide shot here. So this is this a wide shot here? Is this? Yeah. So if you pan up just a little bit, you'll see we've got some keynotes up here that are lighting me, and then my hair light or whatever is this guy here. Little light panels, and so that's what's in the ceiling there. If you turn this one over here, you'll see the jib that was kind of. You can go ahead and turn it over and pan down a little bit. There's a jib over there, so you can see Keith over there with the jib, and then Keith can point back to Jeff. And there's Jeff over there. So it's all in that studio there. I'm not going to be able to take you a tour into the back area yet because we're not. We don't have anything that's untethered, but we'll get better about that. It's actually something we're really committed to, is showing more behind the scenes, and we don't have all of that stuff ready to go yet. Wonky. Anything recently on the shoot that really went wonky and unexpected? The biggest thing that went wonky in the last shoot was the fiber went down. We had to fix it, and no one knew who was watching it because we were just doing canned material, but it was stressful. So you just want to, as much redundancy as possible. There's always redundancy. There's a backup to the backup to the backup. You want to be thinking about what that backup is. You want to constantly be thinking about it, and when you think you figured it all out, then add another backup. I mean, redundancy is what keeps us in business. Any rumors about the first update to Final Cut Pro from Chris Tuttle? I think it's not too far away, but I don't know. I have no idea. I think sometime this year, sometime before the end of the year. That's my guess. I haven't heard anything. I don't know. So that's what I think. So, but I don't have any. I haven't heard any rumors. But we are having a Final Cut studio in a couple weeks. So hopefully we will ask Mark and Steve what they think, and then they'll say, "Oh, I can't say anything," but we'll ask them anyway. Budgets, Tom Wineland. What type of budgets are you dealing with these days for a basic and more advanced production? Ballpark numbers. For us to do a stream, it typically starts in the $6,000 to $8,000 range, and lands at the biggest productions that we do can be in the anywhere from 30 to 50,000. So it just depends on what's being required and everything else. And those are kind of ballpark numbers. But yeah, those are, and it's just a matter of, but it can kind of range in there. I mean, it's not that we do a lot of test streams. It's obviously, this isn't costing that, but we do a lot of test streaming to constantly test the system and train people and get people ready to go. So those are other bits of it, but those are the ballparks that we're kind of trying to maintain oftentimes to make all of that work. I think I'm sagging. Anyway, so but when we started, it was if we could get a couple thousand here or 1,000 there or whatever, we would do it because we're trying to. I have a tendency to look at I'm worth whatever I got paid. A little bit more than what I got paid last time. so I'm also trying to always increase quality and increase what we're charging so that we can constantly produce a better and better product. But I'll start at nothing if I have to figure it out. And that's what we've done a lot of. We do that a lot. The wedge. It's a whole other talk, but the wedge is the key to the operation. You start with whatever you can get into the industry, and then you just keep on expanding and opening it up a little bit. This is from T. Baitka. What's the best HD SDI cables that you've used? We tend to use Canary cables. We tend to use Canary cables that are for audio, for video. We buy a lot of our cables from Film Tools. It's got to be a better way to do this, but that's what we do. We thought we'd build our own. We thought we'd buy them somewhere else. But we just find that for the price, the Film Tools ones are the best, and we buy lots of them. I mean a lot of cables. We buy a lot of cables, and we've just really centralized on. We want to see on our audio cables, we want to see Nutric ends, and then on our HD SDI cables, we want to see Canary ends with Canary cables. And we've gotten pretty specific about it because it's just a pain in the neck to pop the other ones out, and they're not as good, and you get noise in the line, and you don't start buying expensive equipment. You don't start buying expensive gear, but a lot of times what happens is all those basics start to become very valuable to you because those are the things that start costing you a lot of labor and upset and angry clients and everything else. And so you keep on buying better equipment and better connections, and everything keeps on going up because what really is expensive is failure. Classes. Are we planning to hold any live streaming classes? We are planning to hold some live streaming classes. This is your first one. But yeah, we're planning to do some live classes, and we just don't know exactly when. The problem is we're doing so much live streaming that we haven't had time to do the classes. That's kind of where we're at the moment. But stay tuned. Follow PixelCore. Follow me, Alex Lindsay, on Twitter, and we'll see what we can do for you. Definitely check our front page, pixelcore.com. You'll see Ellery's class. It's 3D for designers is starting in a couple weeks. You definitely want to check that out. So if you're interested in Moto and you're interested in 3D and you want to add that to your repertoire, it's a great way to. Ellery Connell is just fantastic, and so it's a great class that's coming up on that. And then Brent Bai is going to be talking about production. I think it's the 17th, 18th, and 19th. I think those are the dates that are coming up in October. So you want to stay tuned for that because that's going to be great. We're going to put that on you want to follow PixelCore, follow Alex Lindsay, go to our website, that type of thing, because it's going to be awesome. So definitely check that out. This is from Kyle Glazer. What is your experience with different streaming providers? BitGravity, Ustream, Akamai. We've used them all. So highest quality and raw feature set, Akamai is the best. I mean, it's the highest quality stream. It's the most robust system. It's obviously it's rock solid. If you're looking for big corporate stream, I want this to work. I want it to be at the highest. I want it to be robust and redundant. And we can send 3 streams to the primary, 3 streams to the backup. If anything happens, it drops over. It's a dynamic stream. It has all the things we want. They are moving into being able to do iOS. It's the best solution right now. Then bit gravity, in our opinion, which is what we're streaming on right now, is the highest quality. That's not Akamai. It's the highest quality stream. I think it just looks great, and it's not as expensive as Akamai. But bit gravity is a great corporate solution if you wanted to be doing a lot of that streaming. As I said, I think the stream is very high quality. It's very robust, and the customer service is very good. I think that as we get into some of the other ones, you have Ustream and Livestream, and they all have their own pluses and minuses. Mediafly actually is, I think, experimenting with some stuff that is kind of interesting in that area. Livestream does, I think the Livestream streams look a little bit better than the Ustream streams, but I think the player from Ustream is a little bit better than Livestreams. I think that Ustream does a pretty good job of Ustream does a pretty good job as far as creating the iOS streams. I think the Livestream iOS stream looks better than the Ustream iOS stream. When you're doing live stream, you're actually sending them, this is the feed that I want for the iOS. With Ustream, they're kind of converting one of your streams to that, and I don't think it works as well. I think that Ustream promotes the streams better. So if you're trying to get promotion, I think Ustream is one of the better ones in that area. I haven't done a lot. One that we haven't really used a lot is Justin TV, and I don't have any strong opinion about it. It's not good or bad. We just don't, we don't have that there. And so I wish Ustream did truly dynamic streaming rather than little click buttons, and I also wish that they would allow us to do primary and backups. When you're doing high-profile pieces, I don't think that anybody should do it any other way, in my opinion. So those are things to think about there. This is a question from Tom Wineland. When are you opening up registration to the Pixel Core to be part of the family? We're going to do that soon, very, very soon. So we're kind of doing some reorganization right now. Internally, we want to take care of the members that we have at the moment, but we'll be adding more soon. So follow Pixel Core, follow me, go to our website, and you'll see that coming up very soon. We're just trying to make sure that what we're really trying to organize is we have the membership going, but we want to organize our the entry process a little bit more before we kick it off again. But thank you very much, and just every time I think I'm getting to the end, I was like, this is going to be like a 30-minute stream, and it never is. And someone pointed out, if you buy Conduit, you actually get a free membership of the Pixel Core. That is the one way in right now, is to buy Conduit, and then it comes with a packaged. So something to think about. Have you heard that light panels are suing a number of companies that use LEDs in video or photography lighting? This is from Adam Powell. I have not heard that, and I was always kind of surprised that that they hadn't been suing people, because they do have a bunch of patents, and I was kind of surprised that the patents seemed to be pretty strict, and then everyone started ignoring them. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, they went through the patent process. This is not really the same as a software patent process. This is someone actually working on building a patent of how this works. And so, that's how the patent system works, is that you patent something, you make it available to the public in 14 years or 20 years or whatever it is, but the and I get that it's frustrating for us to, and I have to say that I've bought a lot of light panels, and I do think that they're, of the ones we've tested, they're the best light as far as an LED panel goes. But I think that I don't have anything to say about that. I think patent law in general is crazy, but I don't, when it comes to hardware and patent a hardware device, when someone goes through that process of building something and investing money into it and so on and so forth. I think it's easy to say, oh, we shouldn't pay attention to those. But if we don't pay attention to those, what it means is they're never going to share that information, and we're not going to get as much innovation because people don't have any, they need, if they're going to put all that R&D in, I have to admit, I'm someone who puts a lot of R&D into a lot of things. And so, we don't patent things, but I have thought about it because there are things that we figure out that, we spend a lot of time, money figuring out. What we tend to do is be very secretive about it, which is exactly what the patent system is trying to undermine, is us being secretive and just not telling anyone how we do it. Now, I told you a lot of stuff about this, but there's a lot of things that we do that we're very secretive about. No one, there's like 2 or 3 of us that know all the pieces. So that's another way to deal with it. And the patent system is designed so that people like us don't do that, because the idea is to generate those ideas and push them back into the system. And that's not actually what's happening. So when you don't do that. And so that's why you do a patent. So you have patent protection. And then when the patent ends, it means everybody can do it and it all becomes cheap, and you get GlideCam. So anyway, so I think that, let's see here. If there's anything else, I think we have hit all the questions. I think we've answered all the questions as of recently. I'm going to do a little refresh here and make sure. It's been an hour and a half since we started, almost an hour and a half. And what we're going to do is we are going to stop the stream, and I want one more question. What did I miss? So the question is, have we ever considered using Brightcove to stream? And the answer is no, because we haven't. One of our clients hasn't asked, and they're too expensive for us just to do on our own. If they gave us a test stream, we would try it. But that's, it hasn't been worth us doing up until now. And I think that's it. So we're going to cut it off. I hope you guys have had a great time. Next week, we're going to be doing Inside the Black Box, and we're going to be talking about visual effects. The week after that, we've got Final Cut, and we're going to have Steve and Mark are back in the house talking about Final Cut. We might have some special guests as well. Derek's Story is going to be in at the end of the month talking about photography. We're going to be doing a bunch of cool things there. So got stuff coming up fast and furious, so stay tuned. Make sure to follow me, Alex Lindsay, or PixelCore, on Twitter to make sure that you get that, and make sure to come back to the site, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much for watching GMT Live.